united to the noble task of forging our own nation, a nation that enshrines our culture of hard work, perseverance, and community, a nation that ensures our children will inherit the boundless freedom we've too often taken for granted.
Thank you very much, Ed. Today we're going to have a number of speakers. Are you getting the message from me right now? Are you hearing me okay? Good stuff. We have a number of speakers today. A little louder. This is Max. Thanks, Max. Thank Max. He's doing a great job out here today. Test 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Check 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Test, test, test. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. There we go. That's great, Max. Thank you so much. We're going to hear from a number of speakers here today. We'll hear how Canada cannot be fixed, how unity can help us achieve our goals, how you can be the voice of this movement as well, and I think you're doing that being here today, and how we can move forward and how independence is inevitable here in Alberta. So you're probably wondering, who am I? Some of you have come up to say hi to me. I'm known as the guy with the big blue mug on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. My name is John Bolton. I'm a former broadcaster of 35 years, mostly Ontario, but some here in Alberta as well. I now have a YouTube channel, and that channel has led me here today. I interviewed Jeevan Mangat from the Wild Rose Independence Party a couple of weeks ago. 75,000 people have now watched that, so thanks so much if you did see it. I'm honored to be asked to be part of this event here today. You'll hear from Jeevan a little bit later on. I am an Albertan. I identify as an Albertan. I am a Calgarian second, and that's it, folks. I am an Albertan. I moved to Alberta 13 years ago, coming from Ontario. People ask me if I ever miss Ontario. I say no, I have family there. I miss them, but I don't miss Ontario. I love this province. I would never live anywhere else. I think I was destined to move here. I was born in a small town in southwestern Ontario called Petrolia. It sounds like petroleum. It does, because it's one of the first places oil was found here in Canada. Right down the street was Oil Springs, the first place oil was found here in Canada. I grew up, my hometown I consider is Sarnia, and many of you know Sarnia is where Alberta's oil goes to get refined at Imperial Oil, so we can send it off to the people in Quebec who don't appreciate Alberta. I think you'll agree it's been quite a week. The architects of Alberta's demise get rewarded with re-election. The threshold for citizen initiatives gets reduced. The independence movement gets energized. We get called fringe by a former premier, and the rest of the country is finally taking notice that this is not a fringe movement here in Alberta. Are we a fringe movement? We're not a fringe movement. National Post, Carney must prioritize quelling Western discontent. National Post, Alberta unites once again against the left. CBC, Danielle Smith's reform is nudging Alberta separation vote from if towards when. When, soon, but patience, planning, and perseverance, ladies and gentlemen. I was not a separatist when I first moved here. But I soon realized as a former Ontarian, I just didn't understand the grief Alberta had endured from the East for decades. While being aware of the National Energy Program, I really didn't know the lingering effect it had on Albertans in our province until I became an Albertan myself. After the election on Monday, you may be fully aware of how ignorant Easterners are of Alberta's plight. I'm not saying they're stupid, but they are ignorant. We are not whining. We are not complainers. We are not like the child that takes the ball home when he doesn't get his way. We are self-sufficient. We are hardworking. We are generous people, and we are fed up. This isn't about who won the election. Something else I have read online since Monday. This is about respect. We have earned it, but we get none. For decades, this province has been asking for respect. In 1987, Preston Manning started the Reform Party with the saying, "The West wants in." We never got there, and almost 40 years have now passed. Mr. Manning properly read the room a few weeks ago and wrote that Alberta separatism would rise if the Liberals won the election. But this movement would have progressed whatever party came out on top. There is always another government around the corner that's hostile to Alberta and the West. During the election, we heard the familiar words, "Screw the West, we'll take the rest." We'll also take Alberta's money to give to Quebec to fund its have-not status while being told there's no future for oil and gas. Meanwhile, we'll run a deficit in this province of over $5 billion in the coming year. This province should have more money than God. Some people still think Alberta needs to negotiate to get a better deal within Canada. How many times have we heard that? Does anybody here really think things are going to be different this time? All the things you heard during the election are true. Housing costs are far too high. Wages don't keep up with the cost of inflation. Food prices are out of control. Too many people are using food banks. It goes on and on. Too many of us in Alberta are affected. In a province so rich with natural resources and natural beauty and the work ethic to make Alberta strong, how can this be possible? Just look at Ottawa's boot on your neck, folks. That's why it's possible. But folks, it will all be better if we just negotiate a better deal with Canada. Elbows up, folks, right? There's a famous fable some of you may have heard. A scorpion wants to cross a river, but cannot swim. So it asks a frog to carry it across. The frog hesitates, afraid that the scorpion might sting it, but the scorpion promises not to, pointing out that it would drown if it killed the frog in the middle of the river. The frog considers this argument sensible and agrees to transport the scorpion. Midway across the river, the scorpion stings the frog anyway, dooming them both. The dying frog asks the scorpion why it stung despite knowing the consequence, to which the scorpion replies, "I am sorry, but I couldn't help myself. It's in my character." Alberta has carried too much burden on its back and has been stung by Ottawa for far too long. Why? Because it's in their character. Many of you can tell stories how you or someone you may know have lost a job in the oil and gas industry. As investment dried up, as industry realized Alberta wasn't a good place to do business because of red tape, regulations, and politics. I remember a dinner a few years back, a goodbye dinner for friends who planned to stay in Canada but had to move back to the United States. They had 2 kids who had never even been there before. I also remember the look of horror on my wife's face when she came over every day and dozens of people had lost their jobs. A whole building being hollowed out because of regulation and because of the boot of Ottawa being on our neck. I want you to think for a moment. Thanks for coming out. I want you for a moment to imagine a relationship with another person. You've known each other for a long time, nurtured the relationship, loved each other, cared for each other emotionally and monetarily, respected each other. You're on the same wavelength in every way. It was mutually beneficial, but then something changes. You wake up in the morning and the relationship is all one way. Your partner begins taking you for granted. You're nothing but a paycheck. Communication becomes strained. They make more and more demands of you. You try to reason with them, but they don't listen, which strains the relationship even further. And this goes on for years. Friends tell you you need to make things work. In the beginning, you shared goals and aspirations. You were there for each other, but now you have a choice to make. Stay in the abusive relationship that drains you and your resources, or leave. Leaving makes you stronger, gives you your freedom, rewards you for your hard work, makes you happier, gives you some self-respect. That's where Alberta is in Canada today, folks. A few in Ottawa make demands of Alberta, take our money, strangle our industry, drive away investment, drive away wealth, drive away jobs, all while telling us to stop whining. We're told we need to negotiate a fair deal within Canada. Instead, we get carbon taxes, equalization, C-69, and net zero. It's become so petty, we're told we can't sip a drink with a plastic straw. Instead of pipelines, Alberta is a pipeline of money to the east to unappreciative people and provinces. There is no future for oil and gas, they say, but keep shoveling the money our way. No more, I say. Alberta has a decision to make: stay in an abusive relationship or gain its freedom and keep its wealth. We do not need the permission of Canada. They're going to miss us and our wealth when we're gone. Now, I wanted to say there is a place for everyone in this movement. There is room for discussion, understanding, and respect. Already the agitators are trying to divide this movement, but the people I speak to are ready to unite for a common goal. There have been disagreements in the past. I ask people to bury the hatchet and work together on this movement. The threshold for a referendum has been lowered, but your involvement is key. You're here today because you believe in this cause. You believe Alberta will be stronger, standing on its own, without the burden of an oppressive Ottawa on your back. Use your time educating people about Alberta independence. Be polite, be cordial, be convincing. This province is only 177,000 signatures, a clear question, and a clear majority away from its independence. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. And thanks to everybody for coming out today. You just made the numbers bigger, so it looks better on TV. Up next, I'd like to introduce Michael Wagner. Come on up here, Michael. Michael Wagner.
I'm on the speakers list, and I really hope that everybody on that side will stay until I can talk. I have a question here. If everybody here who respects the treaties and respects Aboriginal rights could please clap. Second question. My family is half Aboriginal. Who here has family that is Aboriginal? Could you please clap? There we go. I just asked for respect from this side of our meeting here. I have something to say that I'd really like you to hear, and we're going to talk to you about how we're changing the administration of the land that's not related to your treaties or where you live. You had your rights before we did have ours, and we're talking about a transition of administration, not removing you from your land and not violating any treaties. Would you please listen to our presentation, and then you can hate us later. Thank you.
Well said. Thank you. Michael Wagner is an independent researcher and writer and a columnist for the Western Standard. He's written 3 books about the Alberta independence movement and the need for Alberta independence. He has a PhD in political science from the University of Alberta. As Ted Byfield states, Michael Wagner is one of the few academics who can make eminent sense to the ordinary Joe. Michael? I'll grab him.
Testing. Sounds good.
Just speak close. Just speak closer to him. Speak closer to him.
Don't. Can everybody hear me then? Okay. Welcome to our meeting tonight, this afternoon. My talk is called Canada Cannot Be Fixed. It's Time for Alberta Independence. After decades of futile efforts to reform Canada, it is now time for Alberta to strike out on its own and form a new independent country. The case for Alberta's history, or the case for Alberta independence, can best be understood by looking at the province's history. For generations, Albertans have been ignored or even exploited within Canada. And eventually this feeling has reached the point where many believe that the only solution is to form a new country. What is now known as the Prairie West was originally part of Rupert's Land, the vast northwestern wilderness territory of the Hudson's Bay Company. In 1870, Rupert's Land was purchased by Canada, and the inhabitants of the territory were annexed to Canada without being consulted. Some people had other ideas about the best political future for their community, and unhappiness about being forced into Canada contributed to the First Rail Rebellion of 1870. In other words, there was evidence of Western discontent with Canada right from the very beginning of the West's relationship with Canada. Then the prairies were filled with settlers to pioneer the land and create an agricultural economy. There was a protective tariff to ensure that Western farmers had to buy their manufactured goods and equipment from central Canada. This meant that the farmers had to pay higher prices than otherwise, and they had to sell their grain through middlemen who took a share of the final price, and they had to pay the transportation costs as well. So the farmers had to pay more for their equipment, and they received less for the price of the grain than they should otherwise have received. These kinds of grievances kept many Westerners unhappy about their place within Canada and led to political action to address their concerns. But they were not angry enough to create any movement towards independence. Instead, many Westerners, and especially Albertans, turned away from the mainstream political parties and formed alternative parties, such as the Provincial United Farmers of Alberta and the Federal Progressive Party of Canada during the 1920s. Even more profound was the 1935 election of the Social Credit Government in Alberta, an event that set the province apart from the rest of the country. Now, Ted Byfield, the founder of Alberta Report magazine, said this about the significance of the Social Credit victory in 1935. He said, "While other provinces whined about the Depression, Alberta acted. We would not acquiesce in the misery we felt and saw around us. We would fight, we would rebel. If anything is characteristic of this province, it's that spirit of defiance. Push us far enough and we will strike back. That was our record and that is our reputation." So in short, during the first decades of the 20th century, Alberta fought back against central Canada, but not through any movement towards independence. That all changed when Pierre Trudeau was elected in 1968. Great. Thank you. When Pierre Trudeau was elected Prime Minister, a threshold was crossed. Many Westerners went from just being angry about our place within Canada to wanting to get out. The very first book written on Western independence came out in 1971, during Trudeau's during his first term in office, and it was a collection of essays about Western independence. The most significant essay in that book was by John Barr, and John Barr's point was we should first try to reform Canada, and if we can't reform it, then we should become independent. So he wrote that in 1971. And that was a good idea in 1971, which is more than 50 years ago. But it's not so much a good idea anymore because we've tried so hard to reform Canada. 2 years later, as a result of the Arab-Israeli War of October 1973, the price of oil skyrocketed. Alberta could finally look forward to reaping large rewards from its oil resources. However, the rewards were much less than they should have been. Pierre Trudeau decided that the price of Western Canadian oil would be kept low for the benefit of the eastern provinces, and also that there would be a federal tax on oil sold to the United States. That export tax on oil was unprecedented in Canadian history, and Premier Peter Lougheed called it the biggest ripoff in the history of Confederation. Now, as a result of these Trudeau policies, revenue that should have accrued to the Western producing provinces, especially Alberta, were lost to Eastern Canada and the federal government. Now, after a brief Progressive Conservative minority government in 1979, a federal election was held in February of 1980. This election was unique because of a conscious decision by the Liberal Party to exploit regional divisions to win power. The Liberal Party's election campaign theme that year was famously summarized by prominent Liberal Keith Davey as "Screw the West, we'll take the rest." Now, in October 1980, Trudeau's government brought in the National Energy Program, or NEP, which was designed to increase the federal government's control of the West's energy resources. And the NEP devastated Alberta. Thousands of people lost their jobs, businesses went under, people lost their houses, and so on. Probably many of you are familiar with that. Now, despite growing support for Alberta independence, some people here thought reasonable reforms could be enacted within Canada to protect Alberta's interests within Confederation. One of those people was Senator Ernest Manning. He had been Premier of Alberta for 25 years, the longest serving Alberta Premier. He was later appointed to the Senate. So he and two other prominent Albertans wrote a book called Regional Representation, the Canadian Partnership in 1981, which recommended reforming the Senate so that regional voices could be heard within the national government. Like if we had a proper Senate, the influence or the voices of the Western provinces could be heard within national institutions, and we'd have a way of communicating with the national government and not having to need to separate. But that idea of Senate reform was ignored, of course, by the federal government. Now, Pierre Trudeau resigned in 1984 and was replaced by John Turner as Liberal leader and Prime Minister. A few months later, a federal election was held, and the Progressive Conservatives under Brian Mulroney was elected. This was good news because the West strongly supported the Conservatives and expected to get much better treatment from the federal government. However, Mulroney's government was faced with the decision of choosing where Canada's CF-18 fighter jets would be maintained. There are only two cities in Canada with facilities to maintain the jets, Winnipeg and Montreal, and the federal government held a competition to see which city could best do the job. Now, by the government's own criteria, Winnipeg won that contract, and so Brian Mulroney awarded the contract to Montreal instead of Winnipeg, which had won the contract. Now, this angered many Westerners, and it demonstrated, much like the Liberals, even the Conservatives would favor Central Canada when it came down to the wire. So the CF-18 affair triggered a new Western political movement that led to the creation of the Reform Party of Canada, led by Preston Manning. And as John mentioned, its motto was, "The West wants in." Now, a brochure written to promote the Reform Party in 1987 said this. This is from 1987. Throughout our history, Ontario and Quebec have held the lion's share of political influence in Canada, and they continue to dominate the national scene at the expense of the West. Our political and economic development is being hamstrung by the vested interests of the Golden Triangle establishment of Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal. Now, that was written over 35 years ago, and nothing has changed. The Reform Party won many seats in the West during the 1990s. Over time, however, the Reform Party increasingly became focused on being a national party rather than just a Western party. And in 2000, it became the Canadian Alliance, and then it merged with the Progressive Conservative Party of Canada in 2003 to become the new Conservative Party of Canada. Now, the first leader of the Conservative Party was Stephen Harper. Stephen Harper was largely trusted by Westerners to defend the West's interests in government. He was elected Prime Minister in 2006 and remained in that position until being defeated by Justin Trudeau in 2015. Due to his concerns about climate change, Justin Trudeau wanted to choke Alberta's oil industry so it could be phased out. Among his policies was Bill C-69, the No More Pipelines Bill. It became law in 2019. On top of that was Bill C-48, the Oil Tanker Moratorium Act. It too became law, and it's known as the Alberta Tanker Ban. Now, the Constitution guarantees provincial ownership and control of natural resources, but in Alberta's case, that constitutional protection is being effectively subverted by the Liberal government's policies. Yet the federal government is still raking in billions of dollars from Alberta's energy sector, University of Calgary economist Robert Manzel has calculated that Alberta has made a net contribution of $630 billion to Canada from 1965 until 2018. So, to sum up here, over the last several decades, there have been many proposals by serious people about how to improve Alberta's situation within Canada. There was John Barr's proposal in 1971 to try and fix Canada. Then Ernest Manning and his colleagues in 1981 in their proposal for Senate reform. None of their recommendations were implemented. Most significant, of course, was the Reform Party of Canada. Alberta voted overwhelmingly for the Reform Party during the 1990s, but Canada's political system could not be fixed. And that's the bottom line. If Preston Manning and the Reform Party could not get a Triple E Senate and otherwise reform Canada's political system, then it cannot be done. The West has tried to fix Canada, but it does not want to be fixed. Therefore, the only remaining alternative is to get out. There is no other option.
Thank you very much, Michael. We do appreciate it. Up next, I'd like to introduce David Leskowski. David has worked for provincial and federal services in Alberta, Saskatchewan, BC, and Yukon territories under Conservative, Liberal, and NDP governments. David has been active in political campaigns since 1982. He was an area coordinator with the Reform Party and was the national vice president of the Canadian Alliance Party. He was on the interim joint council of the Conservative Party of Canada, and as co-chair of the Constitution Committee, David authored the first constitution of the new party. He is active in Alberta provincial politics, seeking to bring unity of purpose among like-minded, freedom-loving Albertans. David.
If you want to bring that sign that says honor the treaties up here, you can put it up here. You can do that. Those of you, okay. So those of you who are looking and feeling bad that Canada is being destroyed, this is not destroying Canada. This is not destroying Canada. Canada has been destroyed by the last election, because as you know, their goal is to create a post-national state. A post-national state will not give authority in our own land, Aboriginal or not, to anybody that's here. They're in the process of transferring our identification, our health care, our finances, and ownership to the United Nations. It's in process right now, folks. The Canada that we know it is already destroyed. Right now, we're trying to do something to salvage the values that we wanted with our grandfathers. When my father came here in 1908 from Russia, we knew what we wanted when we got here. We're trying to keep that going. We're preserving Canada. We're not destroying it. And I have to say, 3.5 years ago, I was in the University of Alberta Hospital for a liver transplant. And the same faces that I see around here were in the same hospital. When I ran in the 2000 election, I told people how what a shame it was that the national debt, the payments on the national debt then were 1/3 of all of the health care in Canada. Today, the payments on the national debt over $1 trillion is more than the healthcare budget. We could double our healthcare if we got rid of Ottawa's free spending and put some financial management back into place. So today, primarily, I wanted to talk about two things, and one of them is the moral issue of, is it right that we're trying to redesign our government for our region? Is it morally right? Are we being radical to do it? Is it out of line? And I have to go back and say, we had more than one colony of Britain. So I want to just go over quickly what some of the other colonies did to put your mind at ease, that realizing that people run the government doesn't run us. It's our choice. It's our choice to design the government that works the best for us. And it's past time for Canada to have a leader, which is right now Alberta, to redesign governance starting here in Alberta. So just let me tell you, of the colonies that I researched, Canada is the only one that stuck with an 1867 Act of British Parliament that was specifically designed for Queen Victoria, not any other king or queen, but Queen Victoria, to govern the land in British North America through her agent, the Governor General. It was designed for 3 provinces, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Canada. That's all that the British North America Act was designed to do. And I have to say, it wasn't a bad act for that. It did work at the time because those 3 areas were together in what they wanted. They could communicate properly, and it was probably fair in representation. But there's static on the microphone here a bit. But it happened that other provinces were added. So it's my contention that as soon as the other provinces were added, Canada should have done what the other colonies did and redesigned a new system. Why did the eastern provinces not design a new system? It's very clear, isn't it? The eastern provinces did not design a new system like all the other colonies did because it benefited the East. They had control, as the king did, over the Senate, over the House of Commons, over the Supreme Court. And they did not want to let us do it. So now, unfortunately, Alberta has to take the lead and say now is the time that this old act is revisited and we design our own system of government. So I will remind you that before the BNA was passed, the treaties were entered into. There were lands set aside, like treaties, treaty land, that was set aside. But immediately after that, in the British North America Act, Section 109 actually gave jurisdiction of management of all provincial land to the provinces. Alberta has been sovereign since 1867. Having title to the land makes you sovereign in the land. You can't be sovereign without ownership of the land. We've had that. When the 1905 Act was passed in Saskatchewan and Alberta, that was temporarily taken away, but it was restored in 1930 with the Resource Transfer Act. So certainly, since the 109 of the BNA Act was clarifying that the provinces own the land, that the Resource Transfer Act gave Alberta back its jurisdiction over the land. And then finally, in 1931, the Statute of Westminster removed all colonial governors over Canada. So Canada does actually not have any transfer of land to itself. All of the land, the minerals, resources, and royalties were given to the provinces. It's been ours to administer. And I tell you, if we had done what the other colonies did and controlled our resources since that time, we would not be in debt right now. Our healthcare would be better, our roads would be better, there'd be fresh drinking water and sewage on First Nations reserves. This bad management by a select group of Easterners trying to take advantage of Alberta's wealth has managed our money very, very badly, and it's time that we just absolutely stopped it. So just let me say what happened here. When the provinces got sovereignty to the land, what we were supposed to do was every sovereign region was supposed to do what Australia did. Australia they recognized 6 sovereign regions in Australia. Those 6 sovereign regions had a constitution presented before them. Over the space of several years, I think it was 7 years, those 6 self-governing sovereign regions had referendum after referendum until all 6 regions agreed, and then they formed a constitution. Canada had that for the provinces. but because it benefited the East, Canada did not go down that route. I would suggest that we do that now for Alberta, that we establish ourselves as a sovereign region, and if other provinces want to join us, we'll talk. And as far as the radical move of having a referendum, let me remind you that in Australia, they've had 45 referendums. Only 8 of them were successful. So when we say we want a referendum, we are not being radical in the least. We are not doing anything unusual. A referendum is the way that we, the people who actually have the government under our control, have a way to speak about our governance. So let me just give you the example again. In New Zealand in 1835, the Maori chiefs first signed a Declaration of Independence. So New Zealand started with a declaration of their First Nations people. It was a few years later in 1840 that they then signed a treaty with England, and then they allowed England to rule temporarily in New Zealand. That was replaced by the Constitution Act in 1986. Now, it's a really weird thing that people say the Statute of Westminster doesn't apply to Canada, but actually, if you research the other colonies, it's well recognized that New Zealand and all the other colonies had the right to do what they wanted with their own government since 1931. Thankfully, New Zealand actually recognized it in 1947. Canada still has not recognized it. The Union of South Africa, folks, they've had 5 constitutions from 1909 to 1997. Unfortunately, the first one they had restricted governance to white men only. So thankfully that changed. But you know, they also went through a phase. They changed in 1961 and went from a commonwealth to a republic. They're on their 5th constitution in that previous, what was a colony. Canada's not doing anything radical. Alberta's not doing anything radical, not at all. The Irish Free State did the same thing. 1922, they had a constituent assembly, not an order from England. They adopted a constitution. Of course, as you know, in Ireland, 6 counties opted out and formed Northern Ireland. But nonetheless, in 1937, the Irish people themselves designed their own constitution. So I'm just telling everybody here to put your heads up high when you talk about preserving the Canada that we all wanted to see but didn't get. Do not be apologetic in the least for asking for a referendum or asking for a redesign or a rejigging or a realignment of jurisdictions. It's well past due. All you have to do is go to your encyclopedia, go to your history books, and see what all the other colonies of England did. And you'll see that we're not doing anything radical. And then I have to ask, what did England intend for us to do? How did we end up here? What was the actual intention? If you didn't know it, the original BNA Act, actually, Section 2 gave title and the governance of British North America to Queen Victoria. They revoked that act. So that revoked the right of any heir or successor of Queen Victoria to be a king or a queen in Canada. And then you have to ask yourself, why was it when they wrote Section 109, with the stroke of a pen, they could have said we transfer all land administration to the Government of Canada. They never did that. So sometimes it's clear by legislation that we have what we can do, but sometimes you have to think what's not there. If we weren't intended as a province to be sovereign, I believe England would have done something different with those acts. They would have given the administration to Canada. It would have been easy. They would have said maybe they disallowed the treaties, but they didn't. They honored the treaties. They want to honor the right of Alberta to govern its own land, and they want us to be sovereign. And I really do believe that the other colonies in England would have wanted us to start meeting with the other areas of Canada to tell them to do the same thing. Because I think what's going to happen in Alberta, if we can save the tradition values that we want, the last message that I want to give to you is somebody is leaving. Somebody is destroying the dream. Some people thought that the dream of Canada was the dream. I know My family that came from Russia, they believed that this was going to be the dream. But the dream has been spoiled. It's been taken away by this government who wants to make us a post-national state. They want to give the right to inject babies in hospitals. They want to do things to our air. They want to do things to our water. They want to change our money so they can tell us what to spend. They want to tell us to rent houses instead of owning them. The whole post-national state that the government in Ottawa is doing is leaving the values that we came to Canada for. Folks, we're the ones who are staying. We're not the separatists. We're not the separatists. We are doing what we were supposed to do. We're doing what we have the right to do. We want to create a good hospital for First Nations people to come to create better water for the First Nations people. A wealthy Alberta can do so much for First Nations and ourselves. So please take that message with you. We are not the radicals. We are not going off on a radical agenda. We're doing nothing radical. We're doing nothing out of the ordinary. We're doing exactly what the other colonies did since 1867 and before. We are maintaining the rights that we dreamed we would have. We'll have them in Alberta, and then we'll see how the other provinces look at Alberta and want to do the same thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. I'd like to welcome up to the podium Jeevan Mangat. He's been a strong independence-minded supporter since the National Energy Program was introduced in the early 1980s. He was a Wildrose candidate in the provincial elections of 2012 and 2015. He considers himself an Albertan first. He has witnessed the destructive policies of the Liberal Party for many decades. Jeevan?
Well, look at that crowd. Thank you for coming out. You know, it's just a bunch of volunteers that decided to put this on. Okay. Look around you. We live in one of the most beautiful, resource-rich part of the world. Alberta is known for its majestic scenery, our world-class resource sector, and a thriving economy built by sweat, sacrifice, and grit. But today, right now, we stand at a crossroad. The most important moment in our province's history is unfolding before us. After 10 years of failing Liberal policies coming out of Ottawa, we thought that Canada was ready for change, that our voice could be heard at the ballot box. Instead, what we got was Eastern Canada imposing the will on the West, and our votes carried no weight. And the question we must all answer is this: who decides Alberta's future? Right answer. It is us, the people who live and work here. Since joining Confederation in 1905, Alberta has too often found itself ignored, overruled, and exploited. The decisions that shape our lives are made in the hallways of power, thousands of kilometers away, by people who do not speak nor care for us. They take our wealth, our rights, and they write the rules. As Clifford Sifton, who was in Laurier's cabinet, once said, the great trade, the great wealth of the prairies shall go to enrich the people in the East. And that's exactly what has happened. Well, I say, no more. The status quo is no longer acceptable. We will not be second-class citizens in our own country. Let's talk about the Constitution. In 1982, Pierre Trudeau locked Western Canada out of rail power. He made sure that no constitutional change could happen without Ontario and Quebec's approval. That's not democracy, that's domination. Let's talk about equalization, or as I like to call it, transfer payments, because there's nothing equal about them. Since 1961, as stated before, Alberta has contributed over $630 billion, while my guess is probably close to $1 trillion. Quebec, they've received well over $500 billion. And don't forget the National Energy Program, the largest single net transfer of payments in Canadian history, resulted in $70 billion out of Alberta, mainly going to Quebec and Ontario. Boo, yeah. While Alberta used to rank near the top in terms of energy sector competitiveness, it recently ranked 16th in a survey of 20 North American states and provinces due to destructive liberal policies. And in the words of Mr. Jeff Rath, contribution by Alberta annually to Ottawa, which includes federal income tax, GST, excise tax, equalization payments, the hated carbon tax, CPP contributions, EI benefits, is over $70 billion, and $35 billion flows back to us. How much more do we need to keep paying Ottawa? In 2019, Alberta posted a deficit of $8.7 billion, while Quebec had a surplus of $4 billion. Why? Because Ottawa sent them $13 billion in equalization payments from the West. And when Quebec says no to pipelines, they get rewarded. In 2019, Premier Legault opposed a pipeline and still does. The very next day, the federal government under Justin Trudeau, and I do not say ex-prime minister because there's nothing prime or ministerial about him. He gave Quebec $1.4 billion raise in equalization payments because the federal election was 11 months away. Ottawa keeps giving Alberta's hard-earned money to failing industries in the East. Don't forget the EV battery plant. Don't forget millions provided to Bombardier every year, and the auto industry whenever it gets in trouble. We've watched billions in energy projects vanish. Northern Gateway, Energy East, Trans Mountain pipelines blocked, investments killed, and our oil landlocked. Not because of global markets, but because of policies coming straight out of Ottawa. We called for reform. We called for Triple E Senate. We called for fairness. We said the West wants in. What did we get? Silence. Now I am here to tell you we want out. This is not a partnership. This is not fairness. This is servitude. Why? Because our success makes them nervous. Because our prosperity threatens their control. Because when Alberta thrives, we prove that we don't need them. Ottawa has imposed many destructive policies on the West. They say it's about unity, but it's really about control. And when the voices of Albertans are muted, when our industries are attacked, when our values are sidelined, we have to ask, are we really a part of this country, or are we just a colony? Let me be clear. We are not victims. We are builders. We are entrepreneurs. We are energy pioneers, farming pioneers, teachers, and tradespeople. And we're tired of carrying Ottawa on our backs while being told to stay quiet and pay up. It's time to decide, will we continue to be ruled by distant elites, or will we stand tall as our pioneers did before us and chart our own path? The answer is simple. The answer is bold. The answer is independence. Because only then we will protect our prosperity. Only then we will have policies that reflect our needs. Only then we will unlock the full potential of Alberta industries of oil and gas, agriculture, and innovation. And only then can we finally be free to shape our own destiny. Let us pause and reflect, and then rise with the fire of courage burning in our hearts. What is this courage? It's the same fierce spirit that stirred our grandparents to defy fear, to lie about their age and march into the crucible of the 2 world wars, ready to lay down their lives for the sacred cause of democracy. They were not afraid to die so that we might live in freedom. Courage is our pioneers who arrived here over 100 years ago and ensured the province would rise above the cold, barren land they inherited. They strengthened their communities and delivered us a province, a prosperous province that we have to manage. And I salute the unbreakable resolve of the truckers' convoy. Who stood tall against oppressive policies in Canada, knowing the risks were arrest, job loss, and hardship for their families, yet choosing to fight because of liberty was worth every sacrifice. That's courage. This is the courage that now calls to us, a radiant beacon in the uncertain times. We must be bold enough to ask, is there a place for us in Confederation that will secure our livelihoods, our prosperity, and our cherished liberty? Or is it time for us to rise, united to the noble task of forging our own nation, a nation that enshrines our culture of hard work, perseverance, and community a nation that ensures our children will inherit the boundless freedom we've too often taken for granted. Let us draw strength from the heroes of our past and present. Let us stand shoulder to shoulder, inspired by their sacrifices, and build a future that reflects who we are, a people of courage, determination, and unwavering hope. The time is now to dream boldly, act decisively, and create a legacy of freedom for generations to come. Will you answer the call? My friends, Alberta's future is with us. Let's seize it together. Are you with us? John. Okay. Get these cards at the table.
Alberta, Alberta. How can independence fail with that kind of exuberance, right? This is Benita. She's got cards down here she'd like you to pick up on how you can help out with this movement, okay? So if you'd like to grab one, just see her, all right? Thanks to Jeevan for his speech. I'd like to welcome up Grant Abraham. Alberta born, Grant is a lawyer, author, humanitarian, small-holding organic farmer, and family man who believes that Canada has lost its moorings from the value system that built this nation. He is also the leader of the United Party of Canada. Grant had a very diverse career leading in international development across Asia, Africa, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe by combining tools from the humanitarian and social impact investment sector. Over the last 20 years, he has worked in some of the most risk-laden countries and understands how people, families, and communities flourish when they're given the tools and opportunities to succeed. He holds degrees in business, law, and humanities. Welcome up, Grant.
Hey, Alberta, how is everyone this afternoon? Wow, you know what? Make Alberta great again. That is what I heard from this crowd as I've been waiting. That is what it's about. Thank you, ma'am. You know what? There's been a lot of truth spoken here in the last half an hour that I've heard. There's been a lot of constitutional discussion, slightly boring at times, but I have to say that we need to hear it because the truth is in 1931, there was a gift given to Canadians and that gift made you sovereign. This is what we have to know. We are the sovereign in this country. We got to clarify that and get that really in our heads. And we were told that we had to form the government provincially. We can talk about land, we can talk about resources, we can talk about all this stuff, but that's our starting point for this discussion. And you know what? We've had 3 years of talking about the problems. We've had 3 years of analyzing all the broken things in this country. We definitely have two-tier policing. We definitely have courts that are interpreting legislation in bizarre ways because of a 1921 ruling by Lord Sankey. There are things that are wrong with this country, but what's right about this country is the heart of the people that are standing right here today, because you know the truth. And so my agenda is not because I desire to be a huge into politics, but I know that we have to have a peaceful pathway back to restoring the people to their inalienable rights. And this is one of the things that we've got to get straight, folks. You have the rights because God gave you the freedom to be. And this is why, whether you believe there's a God or not, don't ever throw out the supremacy of God and the rule of law. That's got to get back into our discussions, into our syntax in this nation. I see a few signs around here, because that gives us the moral validity to say yes and no to stuff. And that's why in Canada, we're only having symptomatic conversations. That's why we have retaliatory tariffs being offered to us by the Liberal government and the Conservative government. And what's actually happening is that our governments are choosing to support organized crime rather than to protect the Canadian people and their businesses. And whenever we start seeing that and understanding that that's what's going on, then it's going to help you figure out how to vote. And you know what? We need to leave those old muscle memory pathways that we've had all our life as Western Canadians and begin to see that the things that are being placed before us to vote for are actually totally contradictory to what we want. Because how do you say we're going to open up the oil patch on our energy and then stay in the UN Agenda 2030 Paris Climate Accord? You can't do it. And so, folks, this is our direction for our future. We need to lose the British crown over this country, because it was actually taken off the king's head in 1931. And what happened was, let's be clear, what happened was our gift was hidden. It was hidden from us for 96 years. And we've lived in deceit. The entire Constitution that many of us understood. You hear about Pierre Trudeau talking about repatriating our Constitution from the United Kingdom. The truth was that the real freedom in that Constitution was hidden from the people. It absolutely was hidden, because if that negotiation had happened with Peter Lougheed or whoever was the Premier of Alberta in 1931, and if he had been tuned into this, we would have been starting with free provinces defining what the federal government served the provinces. And this is where we're going. So what I'm advocating for in Alberta, and this is my vision for this country, and folks, listen carefully, because we lose a lot of things when we talk about words like separation, independence, and sovereignty. And I'm gonna just take a minute and spell those out. For me, we need to lose the crown. We need to establish a constitutional republic with inalienable rights that protect and embed your rights, your future, your property, and our Indigenous people for the future. And when we do that, then we'll be on a pathway for peace. And our stepping place, our starting point for this discussion, and I agree with these gentlemen that just spoke, because what they said was, there's a legitimacy in our position in law. And make no mistake about it, it was given as a gift for freedom in 1931. It was basically hidden and stolen from us. And now we're reappropriating it. We're picking it up again, and we're moving forward. This conversation now begins in Alberta. This is a conversation provincially, but do you want to know where the next battleground is? The next battleground is Crowfoot Battle River. It's a by-election that's just been called in Alberta. And what we're going to see there is we're going to see a federal leader called Pierre Poilievre show up and try and tell Albertans that we need to stay in this broken country. And he's going to tell Albertans that they need to keep paying equalization. So we got to get this in our heads, because this is how we're going to change it, provincially, federally, and constitutionally. And so this is a bigger conversation. Folks, we have to have hope. We have in our anthem, God keep our land glorious and free. I happen to believe in the providential hand of God to intervene in this nation, whether you do or not. And we need some faith. And the only people, the only integrated community in this country are the people of Alberta to actually do this and see this appropriated. Faith, resiliency, strength, and the will to have a fight. And it will be a fight because they don't want to let us go. But we're free, and that freedom came from God, and that's all I have to say. Watch this by-election, watch for this discussion, and if you know people down around Stettler on that east side of Red Deer down to northeast Calgary, connect with them and tell them to watch that space. That's our next battleground. Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you very much, Grant. Up next, I'd like to introduce Bill Jones. Bill has over 40 years of business experience, having founded and operated an international consulting business in Canada, USA, and the Caribbean, serving his clientele of governments, legal services, international banks, airlines, real estate development, energy development, and the financial community globally. How do you have time to sleep? Welcome, Bill.
What a beautiful day. So I was brought here to talk a little bit on the how-tos. Okay, how's that? My assistant. What a beautiful day. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how do we get there. And just to lead up, a little age-old wisdom. A nation grows in greatness when men and women plant trees whose shade they know they will never sit under, but their children will. Now, you've heard much about the prosperity of a future independent Alberta. And my answer to that is maybe, eventually, yes. Freedom is expensive, and it's not free. But is our economic prosperity a sufficient reason for our independence? Do we measure our independence based on the size of our wallet? If Ottawa ended the transfer payments tomorrow, gave us our pipelines, gave us an extra $1 billion a year, would you all go home? Is self-determination the reason we're standing here? The right to make our own decisions, earn our own living, no matter the cost. Now, I'll be frank, the Alberta independence movement has risen and fallen depending on the size of Alberta wallets. When we get rich, the independence movements die away. When there's a threat, independence movements raise. That's not the case with Quebec. They plot along for their own independence and their own nation, whether it makes them rich or poor. We can learn a lot from our brothers and sisters in Quebec. They have full control over all their provincial rights. And then they push even harder and take over federal rights, like their own language laws. And I say, good for them and more power to them. Now, they take whatever Canada gives them. Why wouldn't they? As long as it doesn't interfere with the provincial powers. Our pipelines are being blocked by Quebec, not because they're economically confused, not at all. They're very smart. They're blocked because a sovereign nation has the power to say no. If you can't say no, you're not independent and you're not sovereign. Such as the example of the United States and Keystone. They said no, and it's no. Alberta can learn a lot from that. If we want to have our pipelines cross Quebec, we need to deal with them nation to nation. No different than we would deal with the United States. Understand where they're coming from as an independent nation. And I can tell you, if we saw Quebecers as they see themselves as an independent nation, they'll deal.
If we don't do that, expect a lot of no. And that's Alberta's problem. We can pound our feet, yell and scream, but the Eastern political base sees us as dependents. What in Alberta doesn't have some federal involvement? I can't think of anything. We can't even pay $10 a day for our own daycare. Quebec gets what they want because they act as an independent nation. We do not, therefore we have no credibility. Alberta has to start saying no, just like Quebec, even if it costs us. Now, governments get involved in affairs where individual responsibility fails. Once that responsibility is abdicated, it is much harder to get it back because the government doesn't trust. So you need to show more responsibility to get back your freedom than it costs to lose it. The level of burden is so much higher. And that's why freedom once lost is so hard to get back. And this occurs between governments. The past provincial governments have ceded and abdicated their provincial rights to the federal government. Now we want it back. And the federal government is going, well, you gave it up, prove yourself before you get it. The root cause of all separation movements in the world and in history is because of the abuse of central government. The root cause of all separatist movements in history is abuse of their central governments. The central government comes to believe it has the answers for everyone, everywhere, not in confusing their own self-interests for your interests, whether it is or not. The provincial government sitting in this building was not elected to support the independent movement. It was elected in part to enforce and retake our provincial rights. So don't be asking this government to support our independence movement. But that's all right, and it's great, because enforcing our provincial rights is at the absolute foundation necessary for Alberta's independence. So stand up and support the government's initiatives that they're trying to enforce our provincial rights. You know, 100,000 people signed a petition. Yeah. But imagine the power of half of them wrote, emailed, and called the Premier to support our Alberta Provincial Police, support repatriation of our pension plan, supported collecting our own taxes. So you start doing that. Be your own leaders. Tell the government on these issues. Go for it. We've got your back. You do not need permission to exercise a right. And so what if it costs more? Freedom isn't free. It's actually quite expensive, but it's worth it. So tell the government that. If it's 50,000, 10,000, 5,000 of you calling the government about these things, it's overwhelming. Your voices will be heard. Do not leave it to your friends. Do not leave it to some independence party. You do it. And further, we need to embrace anyone who moves us closer to independence, regardless of what color their t-shirt is. Even if they do not embrace where we want to go. If they support one thing, but maybe not all things, our movement needs to embrace them on what we agree on. And don't worry about what we don't agree on. There'll be lots of time later to deal with that. Now, it is easier to rattle cages than tame lions. But our independence is achieved by taming lions and not just rattling cages. True independence is achieved by competent, careful exercise of independence and not by some declaration. By acting as an independent nation, you become an independent nation. And then you can declare it because it's the truth. But forcing it, replacing competence with haste, will lead to turmoil. Now look, Alberta independence is inevitable. This is a global phenomenon, just not in Canada. In Europe, in Asia, even the United States are debating independence movements. But the thing about something that's inevitable, you don't know when and you don't know how. It's vague and hard to see. But by competent, careful work on the how, we will achieve the when in time due. Reversing this, concentrating on the when and forgetting about the how, will create vast and unnecessary problems that would otherwise be avoided. So what is our hurry? Aren't we here for our children? This is what we say. So all of you, take the leadership that you have as individuals and stand up, be heard, and support every initiative that increases Alberta's rights as a province, no matter the cost. Then support every initiative that expands Alberta's independence in Canada, no matter the cost. And then support every initiative that expands Alberta's presence internationally beyond Canada, no matter the cost. And no matter who, directly or indirectly, that may champion those initiatives. So let's start planting those seeds of the trees that will give shade to our children so that their Alberta is strong and free. I just have one further comment. I was born in Alberta. The land beneath my feet made my bones and made my body. I stand here as an equal brother on the land.
Thank you very much, Bill. Anybody here signed up for the Alberta Prosperity Project? I'm bringing that up because Kerry Lambert is here. And he'd like to talk to you now. Let me read a little bit about Kerry. Our next speaker got involved in the freedom movement in 2021 after losing his bar to Alberta Health Services after their stance on masking and asking, "Show us the science," which was never provided. He's been involved in politics ever since. He went to Ottawa in the convoy in a picker truck, driven by his podcasting partner, Chris Scott, from the Whistle Stop Cafe. And is the Kerry in the Chris and Kerry Show. He's going to talk about how the Alberta Prosperity Project is collecting contact information for the referendum on Alberta sovereignty. Please welcome Kerry Lambert. Kerry, I signed up this morning. Thank you.
What a crowd. I want to start. I am Albertan. Do we have any other proud Albertans out there? Even our friends over there, please give them a hand, people. They are proud Albertans as well. We've heard the reasons on why Alberta should be independent. And what I want to do is tell you a little bit about Alberta Prosperity Project. They are the referendum movement for a sovereign Alberta. APP's purpose is to educate, inspire, and unite all Albertans, businesses, and organizations to protect their prosperity, individual freedoms, rights, and self-determination by empowering the Alberta government to restructure Alberta's relationship within or without Canada. Oh, wait a minute. I got to strike that one there. There we go. There we go. APP started as Alberta Unity Project in 2021 and became Alberta Prosperity Project in 2022 after the convoy. I want to bring that up because this is not just a knee-jerk reaction to what happened on Monday with the federal election. We've been doing this for at least 4 years, and according to Michael Wagner, etc., we've been doing this at least for 50 years, maybe even since 1905. I'm not sure. A little too close? There you go. How's that? I'm too close. That's what she said. No, don't go there. No. I want to talk about the Citizens Initiative petition for Alberta sovereignty. And I'm just going to call it the petition. Has anybody signed the petition here? So what I'm going to do is actually tell you a little bit of fact-checked information, and I want to clarify some misinformation. You have actually not signed the petition yet. That is the important thing. APP is collecting the contact information to sign up, to sign for the petition. Is that confusing? The only reason I bring that up is because we've gone through this whole process before in Calgary with a Gondek recall. If anybody remembers that, that only happened a year ago, in which the rules were we needed 40% of the population of Calgary in order to vote out our current mayor, which would have worked out to be about 480,000 people needed to sign the petition. Sadly, it was called too quickly. They didn't have enough people registered, and they only got 69,000 signatures. But I look at that as a victory, because anything that you do wrong, you learn from. And we have learned what needs to be done now. There is an actual process right now for the Citizens Initiative, and the threshold for registering the Citizens Initiative application has not been reduced yet either. That is under Bill 54, which only went into first reading. What does that bill basically say? It says that you only need 10% of the people who voted in the last election. That has not come into play yet. We are still abiding by the original rules, which were 20% of all eligible voters. So we had 3 million voters, which means we need roughly 600,000 signatures. That's what our goal was, and that is what our goal will still be. And the reason we're doing it that way, instead of following the rules that may or may not happen, is because how great would it be to say to Danielle Smith, thanks for the opportunity of lowering the threshold, but we don't need your help because we have our 600,000 signatures. I need some water. So again, the proposed Bill 54 is to drop the number and extend the number of days from 90 to 120 days. That may happen, that may not. But what we need to do is essentially get people involved. And just by being here, you are already involved. Now I'm going to read kind of what the accountant has given to me in terms of what is the actual process. Once we already have those contact information, we register that with Elections Alberta, and we say we are ready to go and actually collect signatures. That doesn't happen right away. Elections Alberta will sit on this basically for 30 days to let people know that this is going to happen. But during those 30 days, we are still moving. We are still educating people on what's going on. And we are also going to be collecting canvassers. So if you feel like going out and collecting signatures, please sign up at the Alberta Prosperity Project.com and you'll be able to go out and collect these signatures. It requires, again, another process in which you have to provide your ID, you have to take an oath. It has to be done up that way, and that's okay. Once the writ has been dropped 30 days after this notice, then we will have the required number of days to collect the required signatures. And that includes the surname, the given name, the residential address, telephone number, and or email. We need to confirm that they satisfy the requirements of an elector and date that signature. And then all the original signatures, no digital, no online signatures accepted. They have to be wet signatures. Only registered canvassers can collect signatures and will witness the signatures too. And witnesses will be required to swear an affidavit to their knowledge of the individuals who signed. Once that is done, the petition is submitted, and the petition verification process will verify the petition within 60 days of submission. For a successful petition, Elections Alberta will supply a copy of the legislation or policy proposal to the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly. And because this is a constitutional referendum proposal, the minister shall refer to the Lieutenant Governor and Council for the purpose of a constitutional amendment referendum. Wow. Anybody falling asleep yet? If you did the math on how long this actually takes, as much as I really respect Jeff Rath and wanting to get this thing done immediately, if we follow this particular process, I did the math, it's going to be 8 to 10 months. But all I'm saying is you have to realize that it does take time in order to get this. And we cannot let this movement die in that amount of time. APP's purpose is to get the petition approved, then to launch a massive educational campaign on the rationale and benefits of Alberta's sovereignty. How do we do that? How can you get involved? You can get involved by going online to albertaprosperityproject.com. You can get involved by being on social media. You can be involved by talking to your family and friends. And if you've heard me say it once or 1,000 times on our podcast, get involved. Thank you.
Alberta, 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 Alberta. Thank you very much, Kerry. Get involved. That's the number one thing. And I'd like to thank you all for coming out today. Lovely day here. Hope everybody had a good time. I'd like to thank our speakers. Blown away. So good. So good. It was just magnificent to have you all here today. And there are other events that will be coming up that are being worked on, and we'll let you know when those things happen. I'm really excited about this. I really am. Well, thank you. I got involved about 6-7 years ago, and I feel it's within our grasp right now, don't you? I really do. Perseverance is important, but be patient as well. Good things come to those that wait, and it won't be very long, and we will be an independent country here in Alberta. I'd like to thank our volunteers, Lawrence, Bill, Cam, Jeevan, for helping out today here. Nobody's getting paid for being here today. Thank Max for the audio, did a great job. Freedom Calendar, check him out on YouTube, check him out on Rumble. And I'd like to bring Ed back up here one more time to send us all home safely with a little prayer. Thanks, Ed. And thank you for the background music as well. We do appreciate you being here today. We look forward to working with you with Alberta Independent.
You're a wonderful crowd. I appreciate the respect you have shown. Amen. There was a concern about a curse. Don't be concerned. Jesus Christ said, all authority in heaven and earth belongs to me. And in his name, the Bible says, the curse causeless will not light. The curse causeless will not light. Therefore, we declare Jesus Christ is Lord, and by his blood we are set free. Now in the name of the Father, the God that brought again our Lord Jesus Christ from the dead, go with his blessing. May his face shine upon you, and his peace be with you. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Just before you go, one of the most exuberant people I've seen here today, Benita, would like to lead us in a chant. So let's do this together.
Okay, get those Alberta flags out. Get those Alberta flags out. Get them waving. Get them waving. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to say Alberta. You're going to say strong. And we're going to be as loud as we can. I say Alberta. You say strong. Alberta. Strong. Alberta. Strong. I say Alberta. You say strong. Alberta. Strong. Alberta. Strong. I say Alberta and you say strong. Alberta. Strong. Alberta. Strong.
Have a safe drive home.
Why they're cutting it down 15 minutes